This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, Canada's #1 pro wrestling YouTube channel, with my weekly review of Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. And before I get into that, I just want to point out, for anyone that doesn't know, I put the link in the description for eBay. I am selling this mask. I am wearing a new one for my Blood Hunter movie and another new one for my September 3rd match in in Petawawa, Ontario. So I don't want this one anymore. I wore it for my Forest of Fear matches, my Texas debut, and also when I fought Rodney Mack in a rodeo match. So anyone wants to bid on it, the link is in the description. I actually only have 3 masks left right now that haven't sold because I haven't sold them, because I haven't wanted to sell them. So I have no doubt this one will sell. The highest valued one I've sold so far has been a 750 American. But let me get into the news now that I've plugged that. The big thing of the week, the big talk everyone was talking about, was MJF's speech on Dynamite this week. People compared it to CM Punk's pipe bomb promo, which I never even cared enough to watch, or Brian Pillman's promos back in the late 90s. Dave Meltzer points out that the main negative parts about it is a couple days before AEW had their big pay-per-view where MJF took 10 power bombs from Wardlow and left on a stretcher. And that was just 3 nights earlier. And then he comes out and gives this speech as if he's not injured at all. So what was the point of doing that whole stretcher job and that extended program that he had with Wardlow if they're just going to ignore it on Dynamite? And Dave Meltzer believes, and he does make a point here, that, quote, 3 days later, you essentially told your audience it didn't really count as it was just part of a fake show, end quote. Meltzer also points out that MJF was wildly cheered by the end of his promo, particularly talking about the ex-WWE guys, which makes AEW seem uncool. And MJF got more of a babyface than a heel reaction, which, again, I pointed this out yesterday in my update. People are all talking about what a great heel he is, but he was getting babyface pops during that whole speech. So I'm not sure if I would consider him a heel. I would consider him a babyface, because when you make a crowd pop and love you, you're a babyface. But I never saw the pay-per-view, so I can understand Dave Meltzer's point. They do the big angle. He takes 10 power bombs. They're trying to put Wardlow over. Then the next couple nights later, that doesn't even matter. So one of the reasons I don't watch AEW, but I did watch the promo. And as I said, I admire his acting ability, but I don't like small wrestlers. I've never liked small wrestlers. And MJF is just too small for my taste, but I admire his acting ability. Lacey Evans is backstage for the Columbus, Ohio SmackDown tonight. Apparently they made the decision to put her on SmackDown instead of Raw. Meltzer brings up that CM Punk beat Adam Page to win the AEW title at their Double or Nothing pay-per-view I was just talking about. And the biggest complaint about the pay-per-view, which was about 5 hours long, was its length. And that is a long time to sit through wrestling. I'm trying to think of something I really like. I could say porn, but I wouldn't want to watch porn for 5 hours. And I don't use porn all the time, so I don't even think if I loved porn, I'd want to watch porn for 5 hours. I'm trying to think of if there's anything I'd want to watch for 5 hours. I really don't know. Maybe a disclosure thing about stories about alien disclosure and UFO disclosure. I might want to sit through for 5 hours, but that's about all that I could think of that would keep my attention span for 5 hours. It would just be like torture to me to sit through a wrestling event for 5 hours. Actually, Tony Atlas had a good point, and I will keep this in mind for the September 3rd Great North Wrestling event in Petawawa, Ontario, that wrestling fans, particularly for indie events, only have about a 2-hour attention span. And after about 2 hours, they start looking at their watch or they leave. And that is a valid point, that a lot of indie shows go way too long. And I definitely concur that I know WWE at one point had like a 7-hour pay-per-view. I stopped watching long before that, but like those are way too long a lengths to keep people interested. Bray Wyatt is hinting about he's almost ready to return to pro wrestling. Ric Flair is back working with WWE on a documentary project. They're going to produce a 2-hour documentary on him. He had been in their bad books since that Dark Side of the Ring documentary came out that brought out some hearsay about him that happened over 20 years ago. But that seems to have all blown over now. Money in the Bank tickets for the Allegiant Stadium show, which I'm pronouncing wrong. Apparently, I don't even know what the frig Allegiant is. So I'm Canadian. I don't know if we have Allegiant, whatever the hell it is in Canada. But I had so many trolls go after me for mispronouncing it. Anyways, they're not doing their Money in the Bank from a stadium anymore. So they refunded those people, and apparently they've done a pre-sale for the new show, which is going to be at this much smaller MGM Grand, which only holds about 12,000. And they've only sold 9,533 tickets, which Meltzer says is only 56% of the people who had originally bought tickets to the stadium show. And keep in mind, they're canceling this stadium show after saying not too long ago they wanted to do more stadium shows. This is despite not selling out either WrestleMania stadium show, which featured the return of Steve Austin in his home state. Charlotte Flair got married for the 3rd time to fiance Manny Andrade of AEW. The ceremony took place in Durango, Mexico on May the 27th. Rey Mysterio was present. She had previously been married to Tom Latimer, who now wrestles in the NWA. And I forget who the other one she was married to. She's on good track to keep up with her father, who I think had 5 marriages. And I will agree with Meltzer on this. Simone Johnson, the daughter of Dwayne Johnson, was given a new ring name, Ava Rain. And Meltzer brings up that she's the daughter of The Rock, arguably the biggest star in the world. And they're not even going to give her the last name of her family, which is just one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like WWE. It's so confusing. I already hate the Braun Breaker thing for Rick Steiner's son, particularly since they constantly talk about him being Rick Steiner's son, and they have him wear the Rick Steiner singlets, and they have Rick Steiner manage him, but they give him this stupid last name Breaker. And now the daughter of one of the great, he's the most successful wrestler of all time, without question. He is the most successful wrestler of all time, the most famous wrestler of all time, The Rock. And they're not even going to give his kid his last name. They're going to call her Ava Rain. Baffles me. Speaking of wrestlers that didn't get over because they weren't given the last name, Joe Henning, The former Curtis Axel is now a WWE producer. Now, of course, he is the grandson of Larry the Lax Hennig and the son of Kurt Hennig. And they're going to call him Curtis Axel. And how long was he employed for? And can anybody name me one match that's memorable that he ever did? And I'm not hating on him because I interviewed Larry Hennig and I was a huge fan of Mr. Perfect. But they gave him this stupid Curtis Axel name and he went nowhere. Zelina Vega has been off TV due to injury. Dynamite did a 0.4 rating this week from the sold out Kia Forum in LA, which was the second biggest crowd and gate for a Dynamite episode in the history of AEW. They sold out with 13,900 paid and a gate of 860,000. Only the second time the LA Forum has ever sold out for wrestling. The last time it sold out was January 30th, 1999, on a show that featured Goldberg against Nash, Sting versus Bret Hart, and Ric Flair versus Barry Windham with Lex Luger also on the card. Meltzer points out that I didn't see Dynamite other than the MJF promo, that even though the place was packed, the way they shot it, it only looked like there was 4,500 fans in there, and they didn't do a very good job of showing how packed it was. And I have to agree with that from the MJF promo. You didn't get the grasp from watching this that there was 13,900 paid in there. But this is interesting. This is the most negative I've seen Meltzer be on AEW in any observer. But his points are very valid here. SmackDown did a 0.43 rating last week from North Little Rock, Arkansas, before 5,200 paid. Raw did a 0.42 from Des Moines. The show drew 5,908 fans with 5,200 paid. So keep in mind, Dynamite outdrew. Actually, if you add up both Raw and SmackDown's attendance, Dynamite drew more than both. And because with the giveaways, they had 15,471 fans in the LA Forum. And they did a 0.4 rating, so not very far off from the Raw and SmackDown ratings. So you got to give credit where credit's due. Rampage did a 0.14 rating. NXT did a 0.12 rating. Impact did a 0.03 rating. And Big Cass, who I forget his Impact Wrestling name, has apparently finished his contract with Impact. So will he go to WWE or AEW? Who knows? He did the job match for Wardlow in about 5 minutes not too long ago. Hopefully, if he does go to AEW, they use him better. The Rampage taping in Las Vegas, by the way, had 5,000 fans at Mandalay Bay. In other news, Melody Pillman, the widow of Brian Pillman, died at 1 p.m. June 1st at 56. Apparently, she's a former stripper who dated the Ultimate Warrior in the early 90s, who Brian Pillman fell in love with after seeing her in a magazine, met her and got married shortly after. And Meltzer brings up here that there's rumors that she misused a lot of his money, and I won't get into the details on that. And she did appear on Raw and the Dark Side of the Ring documentaries and had allegedly drug issues. Tarzan Goto, 1990s hardcore Japanese wrestler, passed away on May 29th from liver cancer at the age of 56. Being a hardcore wrestler, I wonder if that had anything to do with hepatitis, because hepatitis affects your liver. And sorry, he died at 58. 58 is not too old to die. And hepatitis actually causes liver cancer. So I wonder if it had anything to do with that. Speaking of which, it was exactly 8 years ago today where I beat Abdullah the Butcher in the lawsuit where it was proven in court that he infected me with that disease, which I later got cured of. That the court cases cost me over $130,000 up to this point. Didn't collect a penny. He is married still to a woman that has money, and if he divorced her, he would be entitled to half. And he does live in a house. He does still have some assets, but he closed his restaurant. He still has one restaurant operating under his name, though, and transferred properties after he lost the lawsuit. And I have seen a GoFundMe that has like $6,000 or $7,000 where he's trying to claim he needs legal costs, but like he lost 8 years ago, and he appealed in both Canada and the US and lost. So, by the way, there's statutes of limitations on appeals, and those statutes of limitations are long over. So he's just working the fans to get money. Jake Atlas, an AEW wrestler who I once interviewed, was charged with misdemeanor battery in a domestic assault case in Orlando, Florida, related to him and his boyfriend. AEW has not said anything publicly about the situation at this time. Paul White, the Big Show, who I totally forgot about. I guess he's part of AEW and has had a few hip surgeries. Doesn't plan to ever wrestle full-time again. And that's about it. That's about it for the news. I will be interviewing Paul Diamond from the Orient Express and Bad Company at 11-ish p.m. tonight. It is the captain who's known for being late, so might be closer to 11:30. But Mike D will be happy about that. Jason, my day is going great. I got a really good acting job next week in Toronto that I'm excited about. Barnes, what's up? I just finished doing chest, back, legs, calves, and abs. And I'm going to get outside for a run before the Kato interview, as Mike D points out. Paul Diamond was also known as Kato. Mike, you better have some good questions for me. Gary checking in from West Virginia. No, and he says nice mask, which, by the way, I'll plug it again in case you missed the start. The eBay link is in the description. And yes, I always get haters. Oh, Hannibal, you must be broke. You're selling masks, blah, 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 blah. Rather than it sit in a box in my closet, I'd rather have someone pay me for it, that I could use the money towards more interviews, towards my movie, towards a new mask for my next match, than just have it sitting in the bottom of my closet. And by the way, these masks are not cheap. They're not cheap to begin with. So the starting bid of $300 is not that much. Trust me, they're worth about $250 each before I even wear them. How's the movie? I wouldn't say I'm going Hollywood. This movie at best will get on a streaming service. At worst, will air on this channel. A watered down version of it, because the real version of it is going to be a little bit explicit. It is an erotic vampire / wrestling movie, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's getting close. Garrett has seen the Orient Express live. I've seen the Orient Express live too, against the Bushwhackers, right here at the Ottawa Civic Center. Ivan, was Sting larger than life back in the day? I'll be honest, I don't think I ever saw Sting live because WCW rarely came to Canada. And when they did come here, a handful of times, one of the times was Montreal, and he wasn't on that show. I agree with you that I don't see MJF doing that great in WWE, to be perfectly honest, either, because of Vince McMahon. Yes, they do push some people with shit bodies like Kevin Owens and some small guys like Bryan Danielson, but MJF is a small guy. And like, look at EC3. He did nothing in WWE. And MJF is a more charismatic version of EC3. But I don't think, you never know how WWE would use him, but he's getting himself over. He's the talk of wrestling this week, so good for him. Kurt, Macho Man was not that small. Did you ever see him in the Spider-Man movies? Yes, I was a big fan of Macho Man, and he was a larger-than-life character. You see Macho Man walking down the street, you know this guy's a superstar. Let's see if it has his height. Let's look at his Wikipedia. He was born November 15th, 1952 in Columbus, Ohio. Died at only 58 of a heart attack. He was 6'2", 237. I would not call 6'2", 237 small. Just the wrestlers used to be so big, 6'2", 237, used to be considered small. Antonio, who knows? I think WWE would always have used Cody better than MJF because of Dusty's history with WWE. Hi, my lovely friends. Hi to you. She's celebrating 4 years clean and sober. I'm celebrating with this cup of coffee, by the way. 6 days sober, because last weekend I was with 3 beautiful women in a 5-star hotel downtown Toronto consuming alcohol, and we didn't drive anywhere. So I don't feel I did anything wrong. Someone gives a woo! What are my thoughts on the war between Russia and Ukraine? It's a sad situation, but I don't follow the news. There was apparently an election here yesterday, and I didn't even know about it till some wrestling fan at the gym talked to me last night and told me. And to be honest, I'm very much in the wrestling and YouTube bubble. Garrett's brother died, so he's getting obliterated every day. I understand that alcohol is a serious problem. I'm not making light of it. I admire that person that says they're sober for 4 years. 100%. Is the cage match the most dangerous match in WWE history? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if they've done more dangerous than cage matches. Thoughts on Bruno Sammartino? Very successful wrestler. Shout out from San Diego, California. Yes, busy night with that girl that was in the thumbnail with me. That was that night I was just talking about. Jimmy, yeah, I am writing a book. I appreciate you're looking for it. I have someone writing it with me. It's pretty much my part of my submissions are done. They just have to edit it and give it to me to review. It's not going to be out, I don't think, anytime this year, but in the coming years, it'll be out. Any UFO news? Well, I did. There was a big conference with Congress a couple weeks ago in the U.S. That I covered on this channel. I watched the whole hour and a half-ish conference and did a review of it. So if you want to look up Hannibal on the UFO conference, subscribe. Then you would see all this. So click subscribe if you're not subscribed. Antonio says the Inferno match was more dangerous. Chicago in the house. The home of the Snuggery, right? Is that place still open? Where the Horsemen used to be? David, Billy Graham is on Facebook, which, by the way, The Hannibal TV is also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Hannibal TV. And he seems to be in good spirits lately. I'll be honest, unless it's something really important, I try not to bother him that much because he is in heart failure and he's got numerous other health issues like skin cancer, diabetes. He lost part of his foot due to the diabetes not too long ago. So I'm not going to harass this guy unless it's something really important. What are my thoughts on Ric Flair wrestling at 72? If it makes him happy, go for it. Do what is going to make you happy because you could die any day. I could get hit. I could get eaten by a wolf out there or a bear when I'm running at night. So you could die at any time. So you may as well have fun. So cheers to that. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Paul Diamond interview later tonight around 11. Check back and subscribe. 323,000 plus now. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching The Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Facebook at The Hannibal TV for more live streams and videos. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram and Twitter